Welcome, historians. Today we're going to start in our first DBQ. And the question is, you're at Valley Forge, and would you have quit? Would you have stayed with George Washington's army, or would you have left and gone home? And this is going to be based upon the various documents that you're going to be looking at. So we have to look at the background, what was going on in Valley Forge. As with any soldiers, they're presented with the problem when things get really bad, they have to decide to stay or go. The word desertion is a word that you should be familiar with. So when we talk about what the word desertion means that basically you're leaving. Most of the time that's punishable by death. Even today, it's punishable by not necessarily death, but you could be court-martialed. So when things get bad, the question is, would you have stayed or would you go? You're going to be basing this upon your various documents that you're going to look at, 4 different documents, and from those 4 documents, you're going to extract evidence. Remember, our focus is always on, can you prove your point? So if you're going to stay, can you prove why using the documents? If you're going to go, can you prove why? So with this document, we're actually looking at some of the issues that people had in more contemporary times. So the United States was involved in the Vietnam War in the 1960s and 70s. And a lot of people didn't know what was on the front lines. They didn't really know what the living conditions were like. As we take a look at this particular document, we're looking at living conditions that people were unaware of, and so therefore members of the combat unit, the soldiers, made a point of airing their grievances, and we know that word grievances from the Declaration of Independence, or complaints publicly. And they wrote to the president saying, you know what, there's really some real harsh conditions here. What's highlighted here, as you can see, the man in the rear doesn't know what it's like to burn a leech off his body with a cigarette. That's referring to people who are not on the front lines, have no idea what it's like to go unbathed for months at a time. So these are soldiers that are slothing through swamps, and there's no time to take baths or anything like that, or to wake up to the sound of incoming mortar rounds and the cry of your buddy screaming medic, which means they probably got hit. If we look at the Civil War, this was good 90 years after the Revolutionary War. What we have here is, once again, living conditions that we're talking about inadequate food. We're talking about, in the Civil War, there was a lot of disease. And at this time, yes, people did quit. They deserted. So we need to take that in consideration, what life was like for a soldier. Now, as we take a look at our documents, the various documents that you're going to look at, we want to focus on the documents, and your decision is always going to be based upon the documents. What evidence are you going to use as we talk about proving it? If you say you're going to quit or you're going to stay, that's going to be based upon one thing, your proof. What evidence? Now, when we look at the American Civil War, even though this was a good almost 90 years after the Revolutionary War, camp conditions, or just living in a camp and fighting, was still very difficult for many of the young soldiers. Many of them left home. They had no idea what it was like. The excitement of fighting overcame them, and they thought they were going to go off and either kill the rebels or kill the Yankees, and that was all good. But once they got to these camps, what they found was inadequate shelters, poor conditions, again, lots of disease. A lot of soldiers actually died from disease, and just miserable time marching on very hot days because the war is being fought in the South, rainstorms, poor food, really, really, really poor food. So you're thinking about, sometimes you complain about the cafeteria. The food during this time was much worse. And just general boredom. And so conditions, in this case, forced people to actually make that decision. Should I stay and fight, or should I go? So here we have our first document. And remember, our question is, should I stay or go? Or should I quit or stay with Washington? Okay, that's the question. So we look at our first document. As always, whenever we're looking at a document, the first thing we should do is look at the source of information. And this particular document, as we look at it, we notice that it is from the University of Michigan, that it's from researchers. So we can conclude that this document probably is it's a secondary source. Now, we have to look at the document itself. What's going on in this document? Well, we can see that we're looking at estimate numbers of illnesses and deaths at Valley Forge. So this is where Washington's encampment is at. So we look at the first question. We've determined what the answer is for that. And then the second question, we're looking at how many soldiers were sick on February 1st. Okay, so sick, basically, we're looking right here. And what is the percentage? So what we're talking about percentage, like we're looking at the percentage of how many people were sick. So we have to determine how many people were in the camp in February, 8,000. We look at how many people were sick, close to 4,000. So figure out what is the percentage. That 4,000 is what percentage of 8,000, okay? And then we answer the number. Then we look at the low number of people who died, soldiers who died. So what's the lowest number of deaths in the camp? Why is this important to us? Because you look around and you see, okay, if people are dying, maybe you don't want to stay because you think you're going to die. You also have to look at what the conditions were during that time. Why were these people dying? Were they dying because of disease, starvation? What was the cause? All of these are influential factors. Now, we then go to our question number 4. How could this document be used to argue for quitting? As I said previously, maybe we're looking at the number of people who have died, or maybe we've looked at the number of people who are sick. Do you really want to be in a camp during this time when this is happening? Remember, we are fighting for our independence. Maybe we can go back home. Maybe things will be better at home. One doesn't know. But basing upon this document, what evidence can you use that would be reason enough to quit? Next question is, how could the document be used against quitting? In other words, you're going to stay. So thinking about, okay, so half the people died, but there's still people here. Do these people still have the desire to keep fighting? Are people actually leaving, quitting, or are they just dying? Do they really want to stay here and fight? So you have to take a look at this document. So as we proceed with the documents, we want to make sure that we're focused on that question, should I stay or should I go? And looking at the documents, how each one of the documents can help you in making that final decision. Should I stay or should I go now?